Okay, so this is a solo video, and this is going to be. I'm going to talk about Dragon Ball Legends. Now, my credentials is that I have not played Dragon Ball Legends, but I have seen a lot of videos. And someone like me, I don't play a lot of gacha games. I've made a solemn, not a vow, because that sounds official. I don't feel like playing any gacha games, or at least any free-to-play gacha games. I have a game that can be considered a gacha game, but you don't need to pay to get the summons, so I'm okay with that. Just obtaining characters RNG based. But what I mean by I don't want to play gacha games because a lot of them, in Dragon Legends case, there are some things about the business model that it's not. I don't like the idea of having to just invest money in something and not be able to get what you want. Now, Dragon Legends is not a game that does it. There are such things as free to play units, but despite having ways to get things in the game with work and effort and not so much an RNG, I do think that Dragon Legends for me doesn't have a style that I want to engage in at the moment. But there's other very interesting ideas. I personally like fighting games. I like them a lot, and I like them for, the gameplay, interesting character design, from let's get from gameplay standpoint. And I think Dragon Ball Legends, even though I think you could probably argue that's not a real fighting game, I think it's in the perfect position that this it has things I wish some fighting games did, and but there's some things that I think no fighting games take after Dragon Ball Legends. So this Dragon Ball Legends has a lot of similarities to a lot of RPGs in terms of mechanics and how character balance works. This is a stat-based game. Every character has stats, and even though I like to personally think that, well, every character's move sets in a fighting game is technically stats. That's not really the case here. Case here for Dragon Ball Legends. In the case of Dragon Ball Legends, what I mean is that you have an attack stat, you have a special attack stat. That's not their actual names, and then you doing certain actions, draw from those as your attack values, and on top of that, there are situations in which you can just buff your base attack, or you buff a specific stats, certain kind of attack, or certain kind of defense. So that's kind of what it is. I'm not using exact terms, because this is not just for people who play Dragon Ball Legends, even though I hope if you do play Dragon Ball Legends, I hope you're here to say, or at least elaborate on the thoughts, or maybe, have an alternative idea of what I have in mind for the game, because I do like the concept of Dragon Ball Legends, but not enough for me to actually play the game. What I like about Dragon Ball Legends, I like the idea that you can't necessarily choose tools that you're stuck with. What I mean by that is that Dragon Ball Legends runs on a card deck system, those who do not actually play the game. And there's 4 types of cards. There's technically 6, but you may have access to 4. And the other 2, you choose where you have those or not, but that's a whole other mechanic I'm not getting into right now. But I like the idea that you have up to 4 cards in your hands, and every character can use those cards, but some characters are better using other cards than others. And you have up to 3 people on the team. There's a free versus free fighting game, RPG game, sort of. And you can switch out into a character that may use your hand better than somebody else. I just really like the mechanic of, you have to make best of what you have at a certain point in time. What I like about that kind of simulates, if those of you play fighting games, the idea of neutral, like more complex interactions in neutral. Not really, because it's not imposed by your opponent, but I really like the idea of you're forced in a situation, you have to make do what you got, and your deck is that representation of the variable choices. And that's something I like about Dragon Legends. The game is very simple. You just tap on something, and then it happens. You slide to move. There's not so many planes. The range system is very simple. There's medium, far, and then close, and you just slide in and out into that. And if you're worried about execution, you just need ki. You just charge up and get ki. That's how you're able to actually use your cards. I just really like the concept of the gameplay flow. It's a very simple game, and it's something that has a lot of potential. And I like once again the idea that you can't just spam the same move over and over again unless there's some characters that can spam the same move over and over again. And we'll get to those characters because that goes into why I don't like Dragon Ball Legends. But also, I want to reapproach them as to how like what the game would need to be for me to actually want to play it, among other things. So, first off, like that's very simple. I find it really enjoyable from a conceptual level. It's very simple to learn, but there's so much stuff to it that I can pretty much say it's kind of hard to master. If you look at videos on YouTube, there's some advanced tech. And that's what I really like about fighting games. It's deceptively simple. Like it's deceptively like think of it. If you guys do any original unboxing, you just think it's punching people, right? It is punching people, but you get into the nuances of where to punch, how to punch, the mind games. It gets really in depth, and Dragon Legends has that potential, and it uses that sometimes, just not all the times, just sometimes. And in recent days, during making this video, they have put out some pretty interesting, and I would dare say innovative units that really just convince you that this game is finally using its potential. It's a simple game with a simply understood battle system that people just jump into and enjoy it. That's what I really like about this game. There's no fancy execution-based inputs, not a lot of complex combos. You just have to have enough ki, and that's how you determine how many actions you can perform besides what's in your hand. It's I really like the game. So what I don't like about this game, and I'm gonna basically structure it this way: that I'm gonna talk about a problem, then I'm gonna talk about how I would fix it. We should go back this way, because this isn't scripted, so I don't have a list. I may have to come back to this talk some other time. But the first thing I want to talk about is that this is a gacha game, and they have a thing where power creep is pretty strong in Dragon Ball Legends. Not all characters are subject to power creep. You don't know what power creep is. Power creep is the idea that character A comes out one day, and then 6 months from that day, another unit comes out on a banner that you summon for it, and that character is just better than character B. We call it character B, and character B is better than character A. So typically how it works is that the older a unit is, somebody's going to come around to outclass them. So that's something we don't like about Dragon Ball Legends, just conceptually. The idea that you have this huge roster of characters, but really only so many are actually worth your time. This also extends to the rarity system. This is kind of like a card game. You can think of Dragon Ball Legends as a card game, because every unit has card art, and they have different rarities on the banners or gacha box, whatever you call those things in gacha games. It's very interesting to me that, well, actually not interesting. I don't like that mechanic. I don't like the idea because I'm saying of power creep, but it's not a matter of age, just you're perpetually weaker than somebody else. So there's three rarities in the game: Hero, Extreme, and Sparking. Sparking units are the only characters that really matter besides maybe some Extreme units. And that wasn't always the case. So there was a point in time where Extreme units were essentially good enough. They were good enough to be put on the team over some Sparkings. I thought that was pretty cool. Hero units, there's a couple hero units that are pretty good. There's the first character to get out of the box when getting the game, which is essentially a Sparking unit, has Sparking stats after a certain period of time, but it's doable. And then there's one character who just is who doesn't care about numbers. He just paralyzes you, and then you just win the game. His name is Hercule. He's pretty cool. Hero Hercule. If you play Dragon Ball, you should totally get him. But he's on essentially every bank. He's a hero unit, so you can get him pretty easily. Put him on every team. He makes every team busted. Anyways, I don't like the idea of because it's a RPG and it has a stats to it. There's just hope that for a character to be viable, to put them on a team, there's always this existence of a gap. And that kind of comes with the territory of it being a gacha game. How do developers make you summon on a banner? Make the unit good. And a way that they do make a unit good is say, let's take this unit from 6 months ago, do them again, but better. That's pretty cool. Because this is Dragon Ball, they may just take a name of a character and then have that character be what sells it, just the brand of the character itself. That works sometimes. So, I don't like the idea of power creep in Dragon Ball Legends. How that fix this? Well, this is going to be really difficult because it's a gacha game, and I need to solve the problem of I need to find a way to make people summon on banners. Even this is why I would like some comments. If you play a game or just pick out games in general, like what's your solution to this problem? Like how can you make money off new characters besides just making them outclass other characters? And I thought of the idea of don't have old characters be just there to be outdated. Something that Dragon Ball Legends already does is that what happens to some units over time is that they become what's called a bench. So you technically take 6 units into a match, but only 3 are active on the field, and the 3 that are on the sidelines, they do affect the characters that are on the field. In fact, they give you a buff of some sort, depending on other factors according to the units that are currently active. And what happens nowadays is that if a character is not good on the battlefield, they're usually good on the bench. And Dragon Legends kind of does that in the fact that you have a character will be outclassed on the field, but they'll be still good on the bench for any number of reasons. So what I would do at the moment is that if you're going to outclass a character, don't outclass them. Just when you bring in a new character, treat old characters as the foundation of a team, because this is a team building game. I'd rather that they structure characters, like say you have hero units and you only have hero units. Well, for the time, if you have a full hero team, they could work pretty well together. But as soon as you get spark units, those hero units now become a great source of defense for the team. And then you get spark units, well, then those hero units provide defense, and the extreme units provide offense for the spark units that are now leading the charge on the team. Something like that. Just if a unit's not going, every unit has a purpose, like a secondary purpose that they're tossed into when somebody else comes in. I think that's something that they could do. That's something that I wish the game would do with characters. Just give them uses. Now, they do have a system called Zenkai, where they take an old unit and then they modernize them, make them better than they were before. And that's okay, I guess, but it takes a while. And it may take a while for a unit to actually get Zenkai'd, because they do it on like a weekly basis, but there's so many characters to get to now that the characters I picked, I don't know if they'll ever get. If I ever do play the game, I have some teams I want to make in mind, and the characters that I want to use don't have Zenkai's yet, so that's not really an option for me. So that's the whole thing. It's basically luck of the draw. They may Zenkai you, they may not Zenkai you. It's all a matter of whatever developers feel like doing. I don't really like the idea. Idea having to wait for a potential buff. And sometimes Zenkai is not good. There's some Zenkais that are kind of trash. And Zenkais themselves get power crept, which is also going to happen soon. There's power creep on top of what was supposed to stop the power creep. Well, not stop power creep, but just alleviate the power creep. So, yeah, that's a whole thing for that. Another thing I don't like about Dragon Ball Legends, I don't like how there's so few free-to-play units. So few free-to-play units. Which is weird because the game's been pretty generous when it comes to Chrono Crystals, and what you use Chrono Crystals for is that's your main way of getting units. But what I mean by free-to-play units is that, yeah, you get Chrono Crystals, but it's still a gamble. So you're working hard, you can get Chrono Crystals without paying pretty reasonably in the game nowadays. There's lots of ways to get them. At least there usually is. It depends on the week. You don't have the same opportunity to get Chrono Crystals every week. But in most situations, you have tons of options to get Chrono Crystals. Therefore, you have tons of methods to get summons. If you save by the end of the month or by the end of the 3 months, you could do a lot of pulls on a pretty high-end banner, which is pretty neat. But I just want more free-to-play units and just fall for more free-to-play teams. Like they have something right now where you can get a full 6-person team, all characters pretty good, both either on the bench or on the field. Right now in the game, it's pretty good. There's like 5, but there's characters like you could fit a unit on there to make up the 6th slot. But you have a lot. There's multiple free-to-play teams available right now, like 2, and there's some just random free-to-play units that help fill up other teams that you may just get units for randomly. So this isn't probably practical from a business standpoint, but if I was making this game and money was no object, what a dream world that would be. I would have it so that every month a new free-to-play team, like a whole team of 6 or maybe just 3 people, would be available. You just work towards that over the month, on top of getting more chrome crystals. I just think that'd be very cool. I also would like it, alternatively, that there was a free-to-play version of every single team. So, in Dragon Ball Legends, they have things called tags, and those tags on the unit, they determine, okay, what buffs apply to you, because every character also applies buffs, either on the bench or on the field, and that depends on their tag. And sometimes passive abilities, like character-specific abilities, also depend on the tag. So, in those situations, I would prefer if Dragon Ball Legends had it so that for every tag that was actually a developed team, there was a free-to-play version of that team. It's a lot of work. It would be a lot of work. But I don't like the idea of you have to gamble for most of the teams in the game. There's very few teams that can get through hard work alone, and I don't really like it. There's a whole system, like there's people out there, they give you, people just on the internet tell you what to summon on and how to use the chrome crystals you get, and as people stated, they're getting more and more generous with the chrome crystals, so it's getting easier and easier to summon, but the point still stands, I don't like gambling for something that I may not even want, because no matter how much you want a specific unit, you're not guaranteed to get them, no matter how hard you work, which is why I wish there were free-to-play teams. So even though there are still units that are out of your grasp, technically out of your grasp, the fact that there's units you can just get through just spending some time, I just really wish that the game had more of that, like way more of that. And another thing I don't really like with Dragon Legends right now is unit design. Now, I told you before that right now, like, there's a couple units. There's a new character called, he's not new anymore. He's like a month old. His name is UI Goku. It's UI Goku. He has this unique mechanic exclusive to him. And that's a very interesting mechanic. And there's some skill to it. Essentially, he has a secondary resource, and you use that resource to dodge attacks. So you don't have to use your cards to be defensive. That's a rough idea of what it does. But I really like UI Goku, but a lot of other units aren't as interesting as that. Most of the units in the game are, I do more damage to this when I'm fighting an enemy with this tag, or I do more damage under the after like 30 seconds or something, or I raise my teammate's attack stat after like 30 seconds, or whenever I switch out. No, I'm very enthusiastic about the character design. I really like the character design in this game because a lot of characters aren't very interesting to me. It's a lot of buffing, and it's a lot of moments where they just do where you just do a bajillion points of damage. I wish they would introduce more unique tools like UI Goku. And if you were to say, oh, well, UI Goku is just super defense, except it's not drawing from a defense stat, and saying, well, yeah, true, it's not drawing from a defense stat. I would just prefer it if there were more characters that drew on interesting mechanics that weren't just, I do a bunch of damage right now. So let's have an example. Well, actually, let's go one step further. I don't like unit design, but there's some units that I think are kind of brain dead. So I'm going to talk about this character called Vegito Blue. And those of you who play Legends, you probably either heard about Vegito Blue as a meme, or you probably experienced the terror of Vegito Blue after a 2-year anniversary. I, not playing Dragon Ball Legends, have not experienced it, but I've seen massacres at the hands of this blue-haired boy. And it's pretty funny. Really is really funny. This is a brain-dead character. In ways, there is some depth to him, but you do not need a bunch of it. So how he works is that he's able to control what he has in his hand. Essentially, he still needs to have. So there's 4 types of cards. There's one type of card called a strike card. So if Vegeta Blue lands a strike card on the opponent, he draws another strike card. And then he can do that up to 3 times, pretty sure. So he essentially gets, with enough ki, of course, a full, like a 4 strike card combo, which is a lot of damage because he hits like a truck already. So he's pretty strong. And my whole thing about Vegeta Blue, in terms of what I consider just boring character design, is that I wish there was more to his mechanic of him controlling has in his deck. And as an example, what I mean by more interesting character design, I'm going to try and just change this one part of his abilities. He has a bunch of things he does. A bunch of things that he does do. Excuse me. And I think, so what my idea is, instead of him just clicking a strike card and he just gets another strike card immediately after it, I was thinking, maybe instead of him getting another strike card, this is an idea stolen from another character, but I do think it's more interesting. He basically gets a random card. He gets a new card, but it's either like one of the three remaining cards I didn't talk about yet. Like either like the 3 other cards I didn't talk about besides the strike card, because there's 4 cards. They are Blast, a special arts card, and a special move card. Yes. So those are 4 other types of cards besides the two other ones that are dependent on the character. I'm getting a little too in deep. Pardon me. I'm going into things that I'm not going to go into much detail to, so I apologize for distracting you from this idea. Weird. So I think that Vegeta Blue would have probably been a much interesting character if not only that he draws a random card, but he always gets another card after using, say, a strike card. But what if, say, okay, I get a new card, right? Let's say, for example, I hit you, I use a strike card on you, I start a combo. Well, let's elaborate on it a little bit more. Let's say I hit you with a card, right? I get a new card, but it's not the same card as one in my hand. So say I have a full hand of blast cards, and I use one of those blast cards. Well, since it's a full hand of blast, it cannot be another blast card. I would have, say, maybe a strike card or a green or a special arts card or a special move card. But depending on which card I use after the first card I use, depends on different effects. So in this example, I'd say I use a blast card, then I use a strike card. Now Vegeta Blue gets a buff in attack, strike attack. I know this is essentially the same thing, like, oh, they just buff, do more damage. Saying, yes, it is. It is essentially them doing more damage, but it's for something else. So let's say, for example, okay, I do a blast card to another blast card. Well, now what happens is that my opponent gets defense down. So that's something I can do. Or in a situation that, oh, I have a special arts card, I can do blast card, and if I do a blast card into a special arts card, I get health restore. It's a small amount, but it's a good amount. Or if I do blast card into special move card, my opponent, it does a lot of damage. You get an attack buff on the special move alone. I think that's a little more interesting than you just draw a bunch of strikes and you draw on your strike attack and you do a bajillion damage. I preferred if a lot of more Legends characters had choices like this, that even though you have something in your hand, there's multiple applications. To go back to that My Vegeta Blue redesign for his ability, what if instead, okay, you start off with a strike card, then you go into a blast card, now you get blast attack up. Or what if you go special arts card into a strike card, now your opponent loses a card in their hands. I think that'd be pretty cool. What if we elaborate that again and say, let's go one step further and say, okay, my opponent, so I go green strike card into green card, and then I have another strike card. So if I do that combo strike card, special arts card, I call that a green card, and then to another strike card, the effect I have now is that not only did my opponent lose a card in their hands, but now they are locked into one type of card for, say, 5 seconds or so. In this situation, it's blast. Just for sake of example, I think more characters like that in which there's a lot of variance as to what they can do with the stuff they have in their hands. I think more elaborate characters like that. Maybe there are more characters like that, and maybe the majority of the roster will probably play the game because characters are just very interesting. They're like fighting game characters, so much depth to them. Dragon Ball Legends characters don't have a lot of depth to them. At least from my perspective. They just seem like, how do I get the most? How do I raise their stats the highest? You know what I'm saying? That's not bad. It's just I don't find that very interesting. Oh yeah, and the last thing I don't like about Dragon Ball Legends is the typing system, the color system. If you ever play Pokemon or play Rock Paper Scissors, there's a system in the game in which this color beats this color, so I do more damage, and that color that I'm strong against does less damage to me. I do not like this system at all, and I cannot think of my solution to the problem is to this thing. Well, not a problem. If you like the color system, you like the color system. But my thing about this is that since it's a part of the game at the moment right now, the game designed around it. I would just first get rid of the whole I do more damage to this color period. I would instead have it be like a universal tag and work it back into the buff system in which if you're a red unit or a green or a yellow unit, you gain these buffs and they're very universal. I think that would be a much better system because I think it'd just be easier for team building, which is kind of what colors do work as if you don't have a team joint linked together by a unifying tag. I think that making the colors just a tag that's more universal and more characters are more willing to be on that tag can just be more I just like that much better. I don't like the idea of having our game with reactions, where reactions are a huge part of the gameplay, and also having, I don't control what I have in my hand all the time. Have another system that, there's a hurdle that you just can never remove. Well, there's some characters that do remove that hurdle just for a set period of time. I just do not like the idea of my opponent just does more damage because of something that's out of my control, besides just not picking the character. Not a huge fan of that. I don't like the idea of me having to prepare for a possible color matchup and never meet it because you may never meet it. I don't know, like the online matches. You're not always going to meet the characters that your team works best against. That's my whole stick about that. Okay. I'm done. For now. As of the day this video was recorded / edited or / made me, sorry, I've played Dragon Ball Legends and no, I don't like this game. Goodbye.